matters are discussed. Certainly the fate of the conference seems to hang in the balance depending on which way the judge's decision goes. To help us understand exactly what's at stake is Lucanio Vanga, who is our political analyst. I'll bring him in just a moment, and we're also going to cross live to our reporter Samkele Maseko, who is live for us at the conference itself, where we understand the discussion documents have been accepted, and then a little bit later on the credentials are going to be accepted around 9 p.m. this evening. So let's perhaps start then with Lucanio. Lucanio, you and I for the last maybe 2.5 hours or so have been watching these developments intently. We'll get to what was said within the conference and the political report delivered by Oscar Mabuyane a little bit later on. But let us kick off with exactly what hangs in the balance from the Eastern Cape High Court.
Thank you, Iman. Depending on what the judgment could come to, it would be interdicting a certain number of branches from the WB Rubusana Region from participating in the provincial conference. As things stand, that number varies from about 9 branches all the way up to 40. So depending on what the judge is going to decide what the number should be. So that's what we see from the court. And that could, in a very tightly contested provincial conference like this one, be able to tilt the scales to one candidate or the other, depending on what the judgment could be. So it's a very it's going to have a very serious bearing on what the conference then decides to do, because even that matter is probably going to change how the provincial conference is run when the judgment comes and it indicates that they've been granted the application that they went to seek. So now that means the organizers would have to, remove those particular delegates and also make sure that they don't continue to participate in the conference.
Well, let's go back to court then. Lucanio, you and I will stand by as we observe these proceedings.
That answering papers were filed on the 5th of May, sorry, 5th of April.
Yes, my lord. No, we are not disputing. But only what we are saying is that those answering papers, it was approximately 6 or 8 page answering affidavit. It was only speaking to the interdict part, which is the first part A of the notice of motion. They were yet to file in respect of part B. And even if his lordship can, in between now and then, spend some time reading the affidavit, it only speaks to why the interdict should not be granted and nothing else. Therefore, they cannot have their abandonment, their bread buttered on both sides. And there is, I must confess, there is a mistake, and I heard from my instructing attorney, which I did initially regarding the abandoning of the abandoning of prayer number 3, which I will submit in the end. In any event, in my argument, I've made out a case for it, which is, I'm told by my instructing attorney that the prayer number 3 relates to the interdict part of the application. And in that, I'm going to request, yes, for an amendment. I beg your pardon? Yes, I understand, and it was to my mistake that I abandoned prayer 3, that I'm told that prayer 3 relates to the interdict part of the application, which is interdicting the relevant candidates which are appointed out of the unlawful process from participating in the structure. And I submit, my lord, my learned friend, or rather my opponents, are not going to be inconvenienced by that or suffer any prejudice in relation to this prayer being accepted again. And if yes,
are you attempting to recover that relief, as it were, in which eventually the colleague would be the further opportunity to address the court?
He may be afforded an opportunity to address the court, but what I'm submitting is that even if he were to re-argue the matter again in this specific part, throughout all the arguments in this application, we've been arguing about interdict. And my learned friend is giving reasons why an interdict should not be granted. Merely what I'm requesting his lordship is to include that paragraph as the interdict part and correct the words interdict to be read as interdicted.
not going to accept that.
Okay, thank you,
I'm not
Madam.
going to accept that.
But in as far as the reply is concerned, those are my arguments.
Thank you. Council, thank you for your submissions. Please, an opportunity just to consider the arguments made, and we'll hand down an order. I don't know when, but we'll obviously certainly receive
May I make a request that the order be delivered electronically, madam?
electronically.
Electronically, yes.
Well,
Be emailed to the respective attorneys.
Sorry.
We will wait from, and I'm speaking for the respondents team, we'll wait to hear from your Lordship's clerk as to when will judgment be delivered. Otherwise, we undertake to wait in the court present.
Yes, that will be the usual manner.
As it pleases
The court will hand down judgments in a live hearing.
Thank you,
But obviously, the order itself, once it's been typed up, will be distributed in advance.
thank you, madam.
As it pleases the
This order is adjourned.
All right, so there you have it live for you from the Eastern Cape High Court. Justice Justin Lang now going to take some time to consider arguments from both sides and then issue an order. Lucanio is with me, and as well as our reporter Abangile Janchis from the court. So we'll see who will line up first, and we'll go straight to them. But perhaps we'll start with you, Lucanio. Is it likely that we're going to have this order by 9 o'clock tonight, which is what the expectation is for where those credentials will be accepted at the conference?
Yes, Iman, I believe so. It's not a very complex case that was presented before the judge today. I think the judge will be very quick to make up his mind. In fact, I think he should have given an extemporaneous decision and dismissed the case right there and then. But he still wants to apply his mind. I don't think it's a very complex matter.
And I'm sensing in the way that the brevity with which you've answered, that you have a feeling which way this is likely to go. What are your thoughts, Lucanio?
I think it's going to be dismissed on the question of urgency. They were unable to meet the question of urgency. They didn't make out a case for urgency in their papers, and as a result, their case is going to be dismissed because of lack of urgency.
You know, at times like this, it's really important, I think, as a way of informing and educating the public, who runs the show when it comes to these matters. I mean, who is litigating on behalf of the ANC? Whose responsibility is it to deal with matters such as what's arisen today?
According to the ANC constitution, only the office of the Secretary General is empowered to litigate on behalf of the ANC. So during their processes and how they set up their structures, they always appoint a legal person that undertakes those litigations on behalf of the ANC. And that person in court we saw today is Mr. Krish Naidu, who's the instructing attorneys to the advocates that are representing the ANC. So that is always the person that is going to litigate on behalf of the ANC. Many other litigants can be able to go to court and take the ANC to court, and in this instance, it's branch members of disbanded BECs in the region of WB Rubusana in the Eastern Cape. So those are the persona dramaticae that are at play here today.
Again, pardon, my naivety when it comes to legal matters, but my reading of the application made, particularly by Advocate Dumisani Scotty, where in that last breath he was saying about the omission of, or the lack of mentioning Prayer 3, which seems to be the axis upon which this entire application rotates. I mean, was that an oversight on his side, or do we just chalk it down to, these matters have been hastily assembled and brought to court?
The question of haste in setting up the papers could be able to justify some of the omissions that we saw from the advocate for the applicants today. However, there seems to be a very casual way in which they are dealing with this litigation. They are omitting a lot of things. They neglected to mention and articulate all their grounds for urgency in the main papers that they filed. Secondly, they also omitted to specify when is this conference that they are seeking to interdict these branches from participating in. And the third one is omitting the core of their arguments, which is prayer 3. So there's a very casual way in which they are litigating this matter, and that's why I feel that the judge has a very simple case in front of him and is probably going to dismiss this matter.
I was checking in with our reporter while we were listening to court proceedings, Lukanya, about whether this parallel intervention or pursuit of an intervention has any sort of resonance within the conference itself. And barring our crossing earlier on, in which our reporter chatted to Stella Ndebeni, and Gwede Mantashe, of course, was delivering his address to the conference, there were references to it. But, you know, as it stands up until this point, it doesn't seem to have really been a captivating issue, let's put it that way, within the conference itself. But it is, as you say, you know, an issue that in a way could have a material effect on the outcome of the province, the provincial executive, you know, being elected. You know, is it something, do you think that, you know, it's just being masked as an important issue within the conference, and that actually there certainly is a lot more at stake than anyone's letting on?
Yes, but the way the ANC always does its things is that it steams right ahead until a court decision interdicts them. In the absence of that court decision, they always steam right ahead. But I hope, and certainly do hope, that the conference organizers and the conference steering committee are making contingency plans just in case the decision goes against them, so that they can be able to, you know, accommodate some of the judgment, the directions in the judgments that may come their directions. If they're failing to do so, then, you know, planning to fail means that you're planning, you know, you're going to definitely fail. Yeah. So they're going to steam ahead. They're not going to pause their conference. They're not going to, you know, look at what's happening in court until an interdict comes that tells them to stop and act in a certain way. Outside of that, they're going to steam ahead with this conference. And again, I think it's only fitting, Lukanya, that you share with our viewers, you know, just the importance of this moment. And we certainly heard, you know, echoes of it in the arguments that were proffered to the judge, that the participation of these affected regions, this affected region, or regions rather, the Chris Hani and the other region as well, the membership that's represented there certainly has a, you know, keen impact on the outcome of the selection of a chair. And so, you know, the reason why this has to be pursued with some urgency and some haste is in order to prevent, you know, some issues further down the line. Maybe just outline what the potential risk is if this is not resolved now. The potential risks that you face is that the conference could be contaminated by the presence and participation of these delegates, and especially in this hotly contested and closely contested conference, if the numbers boil down to very minimal differences between the winner and the loser, just what like we got in Nazareth when Isma Khashule won by a margin of about 17 votes. So if that's the case, and we have these participants that whose standing was not, you know, clarified and might be brought into question, and we're talking about numbers of about 40 for WB Rubusana, and we're talking about 90 for the Chris Hani region in terms of branches. This could be serious numbers that have a material you know, effect on the outcome, in that the question of materiality could be so drastic that they could flip the conference to in favor of one candidate or the other, and that could mean that they would have to go back and rerun this entire conference. And we saw how much effort went into putting together this conference. It has been postponed twice already. This is the third time that they go to trying to go to conference. If they were to rerun this conference, the ANC doesn't have a lot of money. They might be unable to rerun this conference.
Certainly a lot at stake, Lucanio. Stand by for me and let's go then to SABC News reporter Samkele Maseko, who's at the conference. Samkele, good evening to you, and just share with us the developments that have been taking place inside the conference while we've been looking at the developments in court. And the last time we were there, we were listening to the conclusion of Oscar Mabuyani's delivery of the political report, and you've been hearing the submission now, the discussion documents. But before we talk about that, let's just talk about what the mood is. Is anyone paying attention to what's been happening in court?
Well, essentially, you've got delegates of the ANC coming from branches. They are singing, they are going back into conference plenary now. Their dinner time is over. As the court proceedings were going on, they were having their dinner to go back to conference, essentially for the credentials for this conference to present it for ANC members to finally adopt credentials, because a conference essentially starts and begins once conference have adopted by plenary, once there is that 70% threshold and they meet it, and then they can proceed onto the business of the day of nominating the top five leaders of the ANC that they want in the province to take over, and then ultimately voting can happen in the early hours of the morning. But these delegates that you are seeing here, they are jovial, they are singing, they are going back into conference and they are singing songs pro their desired candidates. I'm just going to ask my colleague Gabi to take the camera off the tripod as we go towards Lula Mangugai Tobi, the provincial coordinator of the IPC, who's going to be presenting the credentials. I can see, I'm just going to ask someone to call Lula Mangugai Tobi for us, who is, please call Lula Mangugai Tobi, is over there, the coordinator of the PTT. We are going to go towards the IPC, the PTT coordinator, that is Lula Mangugai Tobi, who has just come back. I was seeing him now, I am no longer seeing him, he was just here, who is back from the court processes that were unfolding in court. He was part of the team of the ANC that was deployed to go to court and to listen to this specific matter that was in relation to this court case. We are going to walk into plenary and look for him because he was sent as part of the ANC delegation. He's going to be presenting essentially the credentials to this plenary here on who is eligible to vote and who is eligible to be a delegate in this conference. In order for them to essentially have, sorry, we are still going, sorry, please move back. Essentially they are showing their support of their preferred candidates and essentially have those credentials presented in the conference of the African National Congress in the Eastern Cape. So he was part of that delegation who will be presenting those credentials to this conference. We're live on the SABC. Mr. Nguai, we're live on the SABC. It's the essence of what transpired in court. Will you be presenting those credentials once plenary comes back into session?
Definitely, we are going to be ready in a few minutes to come to present the credentials in the conference.
What will then happen to the Rubusana branch delegates that will be here? Will they be voting or will they still be quarantined? What will then happen ultimately when nominations begin?
That court is going to be liberating the branches of Rubusana who legitimately held their own branch general meetings.
So in essence, you are saying they will be voting and you are confident that you will win that case?
That case is a won case because it was stage managed, by the way.
Staged by who?
By individuals that are bought in order to collapse the ANC, not only in the Eastern Cape, but nationally.
Who are those individuals, Mr. Nguai?
You will know better than I do.
You are making the allegation, not me.
Not an allegation. The counter revolution is on high speed. The counter revolution is attacking the ANC left, right, and center, and it's part of the machinations of the counter revolution. What is happening?
It's just satisfaction of. Is it not just satisfaction of your members? And
not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
So you are accusing some of your own members who are inside this conference.
Counter revolution works within the structures of the ANC in the first place.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nguai Tobi. That is Mr. Lula Mangugai Tobi, who is the coordinator of the PTT in the province. There are some whom are showing change signs for Oscar Mabuyane to leave. There are some who are showing Oscar Mabuyane to come back. As you can see, Lula Manguga Itobi as well dancing with those whom are calling for a second term for Oscar Mabuyan. Then that will essentially be it with those ANC members calling for a second term, others saying that he must leave. There are discussions between Lula Manguga Itobi, between Oscar Mabuyane, between Babalo Matigizela and Mlibo Komishiane, and Lula Manguga Itobi saying that those credentials will definitely be presented. Back to you in studio.
Thank you very much, Samkele. And it's interesting, the comment made there that these proceedings in court appear to be stage managed. You heard Samkele trying to get some answers as to who was stage managing this. What we do understand is that those bringing the application are in support of the contender for the ultimate position in the Provincial Executive Committee, and that is the position of chair, and that would be Mr. Madikizela. All right, we'll come back with more from inside the ANC's provincial elective conference happening there at the East London International Convention Centre. We'll continue with our analysis with political analyst Lucanio Vanka. Stay with us here on The Full View.